Back in the days, freak shows were very popular. A freak show was like a circus, only instead of clowns and animal trainers, it featured freaks or human oddities. These were real people born different, often mocked or rejected by society, but inside the tent, they were the stars. For many, it was the first time they found a genuine purpose and a way to earn a living just by being who they were. And today, we're looking at the 15 circus freaks you won't believe actually existed. Number 15. Peter Moore. Peter Moore was born in 1932 in Wetumpka and stood just 27 inches tall and weighed 32 pounds, yet carried himself with calm confidence. He was billed as the world's smallest man, but that title barely captured his character. The oldest of 9 siblings, all average-sized, Peter grew up loved and determined to make his own way. He joined the carnival circuit young, performing in state fairs and sideshows across America, where his charm and humor drew more admiration than pity. Colleagues described him as upbeat, funny, and proud of his independence. He lived life on the road, greeting crowds with sharp wit and an easy smile. Fame didn't change him. He remained kind and grounded. He performed for decades, always dressed neatly and speaking with Southern warmth. When Peter died in 1984, fellow performers called him a small man with a giant's heart. That's exactly how people still remember him. Number 14. Otis Jordan. Otis Jordan was born in 1925 in Barnesville, which is in Georgia, with his limbs paralyzed and ossified. Doctors said he'd never live independently, but he found his way through resilience and artful showmanship. He was known as the Frog Boy and the Human Cigarette Factory, and Otis learned to roll and light a cigarette using only his lips and tongue, a skill that left audiences speechless, just like Prince Randian. He didn't hide from the world, he embraced it. His acts weren't about sympathy, but admiration for his control and humor. Otis spent most of his life performing at fairs and sideshows, often at Coney Island, where people came as much for his personality as his act. He talked freely with visitors, telling stories with sharp wit and warmth. Even in his later years, he continued to perform, proud of what he'd achieved. He passed away in 1990, still doing what he loved, making people see ability where others only saw limits. Number 13. The Elephant Girl. Sylvia Portoris dealt with a condition that made walking hard and staring constant. She had elephantiasis in one foot, just the right one, but it was enough to pull attention everywhere she went. Doctors didn't have a fix. Sympathy didn't change anything, so she leaned into it. In the 1940s, she joined carnivals and walked on stage knowing exactly what people came to see. She didn't flinch. She didn't duck the attention. She stepped into it, looked right at the crowd, and explained her condition plainly. "It's God's will, and there's nothing I can do about it." That was it. That's all she needed. Audiences went quiet. She wasn't trying to inspire. She wasn't trying to horrify. She was just being direct, and that's what made it land. Sylvia toured steadily, moved town to town, never trying to hide behind curtains. People remembered her because she made them face what they were looking at, and most walked away thinking harder than they expected. Number 12. Johnny Eck. John Eckhart Jr., better known as Johnny Eck, was born in 1911 in Baltimore with no body below his waist. He learned to walk on his hands before most kids learned to run. Billed as the most remarkable man alive, he became a legend in sideshows and films, most famously appearing in Todd Browning's 1932 classic Freaks as the half-boy. He wasn't defined by his strange condition. He built an identity through talent and sheer will. Off-stage, Johnny conducted an orchestra in Baltimore with his twin brother Robert, who played piano. Together, they entertained crowds with humor and grace. Johnny painted, carved, and worked on miniature models in his free time. Despite the world's fixation on his weird body, he lived independently, drove cars, and built his own sweet home. When he died in 1991, People remembered him not as a circus curiosity, but as a performer who never saw himself as broken, just built differently. Number 11. Leonard Hanstein. Leonard Hanstein wasn't born into fame. He made it, one jaw at a time. We mean, like for real. Known as the big-mouthed boy, he earned his living in the 1930s by doing something few could even imagine or understand. He could fit 4 hard-boiled eggs or 4 billiard balls inside his mouth without flinching. Some nights he'd push his entire fist or a glowing 100-watt light bulb between his jaws, holding it there as the audience gasped. He didn't rely on gimmicks. His act was pure anatomy and nerve. Based in Oklahoma City, Leonard became a familiar name in sideshow circles, performing at carnivals and fairs across the country. Despite the oddity of his act, he was known for being polite, soft-spoken, and proud of his craft. He viewed his ability not as a deformity, but as a ticket to survival during hard times. The details of his later life remain completely unclear, but his incredible legend, quite literally, never stopped opening mouths. Number 10. The Lion-Faced Man. Well now, this is unbelievable. Stefan Bibrowski's body was covered with thick hair, an inch long from head to foot. His mother believed he was cursed and handed him over to a promoter, Sedlmayr, when he was only 4. Strangely, Sedlmayr treated him with care, giving him an education and a future in performance. To draw crowds, he told the story that Stefan's father had been devoured by a lion, leaving the child marked forever. The public believed every word. As Lionel the Lion-Faced Man, Stefan charmed audiences with his manners, languages, and athletic ability. Behind the stage lights, he was calm, kind, and thoughtful. In 1904, a hotel fire terrified him, not because of the flames, but because he feared losing his hair, the identity that defined him. He performed across Europe and America for decades before retiring in 1928. He returned to Germany and died at 41, leaving behind an air of mystery that never truly faded. Number 9. The Fat Lady of Coney Island. Amanda Siebert didn't enter show business through ambition or accident. Her body changed after giving birth. By her early 20s, she was over 600 pounds and gaining. Doctors didn't offer much. Neither did the world. But instead of shrinking from it, she gave herself a new name, Jolly Irene, and started working with the Ringling Brothers. Not out of desperation, just practicality. She needed income. People stared anyway. Might as well charge admission. She sat center stage, sometimes barely able to move, and greeted crowds with sarcasm, jokes, and stone-faced honesty. They thought they'd laugh at her size, but often found themselves laughing at her timing instead. Eventually, travel got harder. So she settled in Coney Island and kept performing there. No circus tents, just a small stage, a chair that held her, and a voice that never softened. She didn't talk about being brave. She didn't do motivational speeches. She just sat there, unapologetically, and made people decide for themselves what they were looking at. Number 8. The Great Waldo. Known as the human ostrich, the Great Waldo built his fame by eating the unimaginable. Born around 1920 in Germany, he astonished audiences by swallowing nearly anything: rings, coins, watches, frogs, and even live mice. Dressed sharply in a tuxedo, he'd turn each act into a strange kind of elegance. The highlight of his routine was always the same. He'd swallow a live mouse, pause, and moments later, bring it back up alive and unharmed. Crowds screamed, laughed, and couldn't look away. Waldo was Jewish, and when the Nazis rose to power, he fled Germany in 1938, eventually finding work in America. He performed with the Ringling Brothers Circus, and later at Hubert's Museum in New York. His act never crossed into cruelty. It was shock, not harm. Those who knew him said he was gentle and reserved off stage. Behind the tuxedo and theatrics stood a real man simply surviving through talent and super odd grace. Number 7. Jennifer Miller. While circus freaks is not a word Jennifer ever claimed, she knew what people saw when she stepped on stage. A beard, a lady, something they didn't have a box for. She didn't care. Born in the 1960s, she grew up watching women strip themselves down to fit in, shaving, conforming, erasing. Jennifer kept her beard, not as a gimmick, not for shock, just because it was hers. She founded Circus, a traveling one-ring rebellion where drag, protest, politics, and queer joy collided on stage without apology. Nothing about it begged for permission. It wasn't there to be palatable. It was loud, messy, and deliberate. Off stage, she teaches, writes, and refuses to shrink herself for anyone. Her beard isn't a punchline, it's punctuation. She uses it to interrupt, to shift the gaze, to ask why anyone's still surprised. Jennifer never belonged to the tradition of sideshow freaks, but she knew what it meant to be stared at and how to turn that stare back around. Number 6. Jojo, the dog-faced boy. Fedor Jeftichu didn't bark at home. That was part of the act. Barnum paid well and had a plan. Dress him in a Russian uniform, tell the public he was half human, half beast, and have him growl like a trained animal. It sold tickets. Fedor had hypertrichosis, long facial and body hair that covered his features completely. His father had it too, and built a sideshow career in Europe off the same condition. He also drank heavily and abused his son on and off stage. When the old man died, Fedor took control. He moved to the US at 16 and earned real money, $500 a week in 1886. Crowds expected a monster. Off stage, they'd never recognize him. He was calm, articulate, and multilingual. Read constantly, spoke 5 languages. He wasn't wild, he was professional. He kept performing until his death from pneumonia in Greece at age 35. He left no family behind, but people remembered him. Not the bark, not the fur, the presence. Number 5. Priscilla Lowther. Priscilla Roman was born in Puerto Rico in 1911 with hypertrichosis and 2 rows of teeth. Her father brought her to New York, hoping doctors could help. Instead, he found a world that stared more than it healed. Realizing she'd always be judged, he partnered with promoter Carl Lowther, who later adopted her after her father's death. He gave her education, safety, and a family. Performing as the Monkey Girl, Priscilla built her life with dignity, not shame. She met Emmett Bajano, known as the alligator-skinned man, and they fell deeply in love. They married in 1938, lost an infant daughter, and later adopted a son. Together, they ran their own small show in Gibsonton, Florida, a place known for retired circus performers. After Emmett's death in 1995, Priscilla continued performing at fairs. She died peacefully in 2001 at 89, surrounded by memories and respect. She wasn't a sideshow act. She was simply and completely human. Number 4. The clown who ran for president. Dan Rice wasn't wearing face paint or spinning plates. He stood on stage in the 1800s delivering jokes, juggling lines, lifting animals, training elephants, and roasting politicians before political satire was even a concept. He started with a trained pig that could nod yes or no and built from there. He was the first American performer to make over $1,000 a week, back when a full dollar could buy a full cart of groceries. People came for comedy and stayed for commentary. Zachary Taylor used Dan's circus wagon to campaign. That's where the phrase, "jump on the bandwagon," came from. Rice didn't stop there. He ran for Senate, then ran for president in 1868, and he meant it. It wasn't a gag. He believed performers were closer to the public than politicians ever were. Eventually, his popularity faded. He was forgotten. But a bunch of the phrases we use now, the way politics blends into spectacle, a lot of that started with him. Number 3, Crow, the missing link. Crow was born in Laos with hypertrichosis, flexible joints, and small dental differences, traits promoters twisted into a fantasy. Her parents sold her to scouts working for G.A. Irene, who displayed her across Europe as Darwin's missing link. They invented a story about a tribe of man-monkeys that lived in trees and spoke broken words. None of it was true. Crow was intelligent, graceful, and curious. She spoke several languages, loved music, and enjoyed fine dresses and ribbons. After years on display, she settled in Brooklyn and lived quietly, performing when she wished. She cooked, played the violin, and hosted friends with warmth and humor. Near the end of her life, she asked to be cremated so no one could exhibit her body again, but the law denied it. At her funeral, her sideshow friends gathered to say goodbye. One said softly, "If anyone went to heaven, that woman did." Everyone agreed. All right, now, let's head over to number 2, the hair-hanging wonders. There's no trick. Real human hair, yanked, pulled, twisted, and knotted to a rig above the stage. Victoria Medeiros and Whitney Neves built their entire act around it. It's not flashy, it's not cool, it's pain dressed up in sequins. Victoria doesn't eat junk, doesn't use heat tools, spends hours keeping her hair strong. Her husband is the only one allowed to rig her, part trust, part necessity. One wrong tie, and the roots start tearing. The act starts with a slow lift. By mid-air, they're spinning, hanging by nothing but strands pulled tight against their skulls. Whitney sometimes hangs upside down and supports Victoria's full weight with nothing but her neck and jaw position. The most brutal part? The silk descent. No platform, no cushion. Just a spinning fall, hair still stretched, scalp still holding. They train constantly. Miss a week, and the body forgets. No one claps because it's pretty. They clap because it looks like it shouldn't be possible, but somehow is. Number 1, Annie Jones. Annie Jones was born in 1865 with hair already covering her face, a sight that drew instant attention. Within months, P.T. Barnum began paying her family $150 a week to feature her as the infant Esau. Her mother managed her career closely and refused to let her be treated like a sideshow animal. Still, danger struck when a phrenologist kidnapped Annie during a trip. She was later found safe in New York, and her mother never let her out of sight again. Annie grew into the bearded lady, known not for shock, but for grace. She was talented, playing instruments and speaking elegantly. Her 6-foot-long hair added presence, not ridicule. She married twice, traveled widely, and lived on her own terms. When she died at 37, photos showed a composed woman with pride in her eyes. Annie Jones didn't chase fame. She turned mockery into quiet power and undeniable individuality. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you in the next one.